Afternoon, and joining us now on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline, Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop Honda shop, Emmy Award-winning director, and one of the directors of the Quarterback documentary series on Netflix. Pleasure to welcome in Tim Rumpff. Tim, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Oh, a pleasure. And I was telling FP before the break, I started watching this series just to do my due diligence and be prepared for this interview today. And then next thing I knew, I was hooked and I was watching till I couldn't keep my eyes open on the living room couch. When this was first announced, and I spent a couple of years in Minnesota talking a lot of Vikings and watching Kirk Cousins up close. When this was first announced, I and a lot of other people went, Kirk Cousins? That's because he doesn't come off as the most entertaining or amusing guy, but he turns out to be, and I know you were specifically directing the Kirk Cousins portion of this. He turns out to be the breakout star of this thing. What did you see in Kirk Cousins that he was selected for this documentary series?
Well, yeah, even, taking a step back and really looking at why we selected all three guys, it was kind of going in, we wanted to have three quarterbacks that had very different stories and were at very different points in their careers. So with Patrick, obviously you had a guy that had won the Super Bowl before. He's trying to get back there again. And then with Kirk, he was that perfect mid-level guy that has had a ton of success statistically in his career. He's had a bunch of wins as well, but really hasn't broken through with that big playoff win or that drive towards the Super Bowl. And then with Marcus, it was kind of just a completely different story where the guy is trying to prove that he belongs to be a starter. And I really liked that choice that we made, just because I think through the 8 episodes, it really plays out that those guys have very different stories with where they are in their careers. And this season, to capture them, go through everything they did, was really fascinating. But like you asked with Kirk, I'm a producer with NFL Film, so every single season we mic him up for different projects, and he actually is pretty engaging. He's pretty likable on the field. He's certainly quirky, so we knew he kind of had that aspect to him. But what I was kind of blown away with working with him was just all the stuff off the field that he does, and I found that really fascinating, and it was really tremendous that he was able to allow us to capture that.
Hey Tim, FP Jr. here. I was just absolutely blown away by this docuseries. And the best compliment I could give you and your team is that I'm going to watch it twice. That's how good it was. It's absolutely incredible. I was blown away by the access these players allowed you guys to have. Did you have to pull any hairs, or were they just really responsive to the asks you guys were asking?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point because, like I was saying, I've worked on various projects. I mean, I was, a director with Hard Knocks for 3 years. So when you go into a project like this, you never know the openness that a player is going to have. Like every single player has a different level of willingness to do certain things, what doors they're going to open to you. But Kirk, fortunately for me, I was with him all season. So the very first day that I went to his house to meet with him, we had just an interview schedule, just a typical, 1 hour interview, kind of an intro. Hey, this is a baby step to hopefully make bigger steps down the line. And within that first shoot, we did the first interview and he was like, all right, what else do you want to shoot? And I was like, well, what are you doing? And, that's why we're here. That's kind of the point of it. So that very first shoot, we end up, filming him up in his kids' bed, and reading them stories and putting them to bed. And we left that shoot. I called back in the office. I was like, hey, we might have something special here. I mean, if that's where we're starting, I can only imagine where we're going to go with him.
Talking with Tim Rumpff, one of the directors of the Quarterback documentary series over on Netflix, the number one trending show on Netflix right now. One of the things about this is every one of these guys is mic'd up, and I don't know that I've ever heard the crunch of an NFL hit as the way that I hear it. And I don't know what you guys did differently about the way that you had them mic'd up. And you literally, there are times where you're cringing, like you're feeling the hit with these guys. Was there any point in the directing and editing of this where you had to take a break? You're like, man, this is too much. All these hits, watching them back to back to back.
Yeah, I mean, I will tell you. So I had 2 moments like that. So, fortunately, I was able to go most of these games with the Vikings and be there on the sidelines and listen to Kirk's mic while it's happening in real time. Buffalo game was actually one where I wasn't at, so I had no idea how much he got hit and how much pain he was in until after we got that footage back. However, during the Washington game, I will say you had one of those moments where your heart just kind of sinks down in your stomach when he takes a big hit from Deron Payne, and then I'm looking over and he's just laying on the ground. Because all I could hear from his mic was him moaning. I couldn't hear him actually saying, "Hey, I'm okay. It's just my wind knocked out." So immediately I'm thinking, "Oh my gosh, is it an ACL? What the heck happened?"
Yeah.
And fortunately, he got up, but it was like that was a big moment where I was like, wow, this guy really, really takes a beating. And all the guys really take a beating. And it's fascinating to see what they go through to get back out there. Just like, Patrick in the playoffs, same thing, watching it on TV, knowing that we had him mic'd up, and then he goes down with that ankle injury. And the first thing I wanted to do Monday morning was I got to see that footage. Like, what is he talking about on the sidelines after that happens? And it's great that the viewers get to see that as well.
So, Tim, I have to ask, I have a production background, previously producing television and some feature work. Just the heavy lift of this all is insane to me. Could you maybe break it down for the listeners, just all the hard work that went into it on your side of things that maybe the average listener right now just doesn't realize?
Yeah, so certainly was a team effort. We had a showrunner who basically had a cork board in his office with little index cards that were constantly shuffling because, with a show like this, you can kind of have an idea. Hey, we want an episode to be on the physicality of the game. We want a show to be on the mental aspect of the game. But, we had no idea going into the season we're going to have a game like the Buffalo game where it ends up being the best game of the entire season and we've got the quarterback mic'd up for the entire thing. Or like, hey, by the way, we're going to have the greatest comeback in NFL history and we're all over it. So it's like, it's great to be good at these type of things. And obviously NFL Films is one of the best in the business, but you got to have luck at the same time, I think. But going back to the group aspect, it's, you've got that showrunner. We had a director with each one of those quarterbacks that were with them pretty much every week of the season. We had local camera operators and audio engineers in every single city. So at the drop of the hat, if Patrick Mahomes called and said, "Hey, I'm having people over at my house," we were able to get there within 10 minutes. And then we had a team of editors and loggers back in NFL Films in Mount Laurel, New Jersey that, we're getting that footage the next day after it's shot and someone's logging it and someone's editing it and having it at least a sequence to look at within 24 hours. So it's really fascinating the turnaround that we were able to pull off for this.
Talking with Tim Rumpff, director of the quarterback documentary series on Netflix. A lot of the times you'll hear documentary filmmakers say that they don't attach themselves to their subject. Like war documentarians don't interject themselves into what they're filming. Nature documentarians don't save an animal that they might see. They're there simply to capture the moment. Were you able to separate yourself from the subject, in this case Kirk Cousins? Because like you said, he let you into his home and gave you a peek into his life and his family.
Yeah, you try to, but you have to be honest at the end of the day. You just spend 6 months with this, not only individual, but also with his wife and his kids and his siblings and his friends and, his team and even just the Vikings organization, how open they were. And, we got close with them. So, I'd be lying if I'd say I wasn't rooting for them to have success towards the end of the year and was certainly crushed when it ended how it did. But that's part of the gig. Not all stories can have happy endings, and certainly his wasn't one. But fortunately, we did have one in the series with the Chiefs and Mahomes.
Tim, I got to ask you this question because I know somebody else has got to be thinking it. You guys probably have hours and hours and hours of footage and just stuff that is untold. Is there anything that almost made the show that you wish did?
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff because if you think about everything that we captured, so we had them mic'd up for 17 games, which is 3 hours of footage for each of those games.
Wow.
Practices each week, which run 3 hours themselves. So, I'm horrible at math, but that's a ton of footage there. There's, and then there are some off the field stuff, I could spend, when each of Kirk's bodywork sessions where he's getting the massage done by the chiropractor is probably 3 hours. So, there's certainly enough stuff just to make a Kirk Cousins documentary on its own. But certainly the best things that I really loved ended up in the series. So I was happy to see that.
I was, the chiropractor. So I said I could feel the hits when I was watching. I could feel those pops. And I immediately wanted to go visit my chiropractor when I was watching that. I do want to ask you before we let you go, Tim Rumpff, Emmy award-winning director, joining us here on Sactown Sports. I know you've been involved in the Hard Knocks series in the past, and this year there's some controversy with it, with the Jets not necessarily wanting to participate, and reportedly they're going to restrict some of the access that the NFL Films team usually gets. How much do you think that will change the production and the final product of that TV show? How much do guys who do what you do, Tim, rely on that access to give us the best product that you can pump out?
Sure. I mean, I'm not as close as it this year as I have in previous years, but I can just say from my experience previous years, it's all about building a relationship. So I think it's a matter of getting the crew in there, getting them familiar with the coaches and the staff and the players and all that stuff. And then you see where it goes from there. So, I think once you build the relationships, then kind of doors start to open from there.
That is Tim Rumpff. I highly, highly encourage folks to check out. If you haven't already, you probably have. It's the #1 show on Netflix right now. But if you haven't, check out the quarterback documentary series over on Netflix. And our guest for the last few minutes here, one of the directors, Tim Rumpff. Tim, really appreciate the time and the insight, man. And great work. And we saw that it got picked up for a second season. That's a testament to the fine work that you all did. So we really appreciate the time.
Thank you guys so much. Love talking to you.
Thank you so much yourself. And Tim Rumpff joins us on the Folsom Lake Honda Hotline. Folsom Lake Honda, your one-stop